What's up, everybody? Today's video feels a little bit more like reacting to wild court moments from a one-off random case, but it's not. This is the case we're following, Chad Daybell, and it just so happened to have a pretty wild and interesting court moment that was almost highlighted more afterwards, and we'll talk about whether or not that backfired on the defense and what you guys thought about it, and then we'll briefly recap the evidence in a short day of trial today on Friday, April 26th. And we'll get into all your questions and comments as we go. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to our page. So the first thing I think we'll do is we'll just kind of recap some of the evidence that came out on Friday and the end of the day on Thursday. It was a little bit weird when they talked about, Tammy's potential knowledge or involvement in the dark light scales. And how someone opened the email from Charles Vallow. We don't know if it was Tammy. It was in the deleted folder. Was she in the Chad Daybell vortex? Was she manipulated by him? Was she believing everything he said? Was she okay with the Lori Vallow situation? It's interesting and weird because we don't know. And people get brainwashed or just either believe everything their husband says if he's lying to them or, tells them. I mean, we've literally seen these cults and you think of David Koresh and the Branch Davidians and how this guy just had everybody's wives as his concubines, basically. And it's like weird stuff happens. I have no idea. Maybe she was pushing back on it. I don't know. We just don't know is the point. Some very strange things that it's hard to put our finger on, but they continue to lay proof down that Chad was planning for and wanted Tammy out of the picture. And even some of his friends that testified on Friday about how it was red flags, they were saying to each other, do we think Chad might have done this? Because of how quickly he wanted the turnaround, how quickly he wanted the funeral, no autopsy, wasn't answering questions, wouldn't let the church or the school that she worked at get involved and really plan for the best time for all of them to come. They all thought she was healthy and happy and fine, and didn't really see this coming and were pretty shocked by it. And his just actions and reactions post her passing were not normal, not what you expect. Pryor pushed back a lot on Cross, saying he was distraught. The bishop of the church, you would know, and he was definitely distraught. And then on redirect, they were like, well, what did you think when he got married like that? Bishop was like, I was shocked. And does that change the way you look at how distraught he was? And he said, it's hard to say. It's really hard to say whether I knew, it was legitimate or genuine or not. I just don't know is the point. And none of us know, but that's why the witnesses can just testify to what they heard and what they saw. And the jury's going to have to determine, was he faking it? Or maybe he did this and was still sad because she was his wife for such a long time and the mother of his children. That could also be true, but he did what he wanted to do. We'll see if that's what the jury ends up deciding. Then we get to this witness, the realtor, whose wife also testified, friends of the Daybells, and how Chad was talking about he was going to meet his new wife immediately after Tammy. How he was going to Hawaii to write a biography. A biography is important, not some fiction, but some real story about James and Elena. And he said he asked Lori how many kids she had. She had 7, which was weird. But he gets in the car after Lori was arrested, talking to Chad. And what is their conversation like? That's where we're going to jump into today's clips.
Correct.
Thank you. So you met with Mr. Daybell at your rental home.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you do next?
He got in with me in my vehicle and we drove around and visited.
What was the first thing that you talked about with Chad Daybell?
I asked Chad the questions that probably everybody else would want to ask about where are the kids and why haven't you told anybody? And sorry.
That's okay. So let's zoom out a little bit.
Okay.
What was going on at that time that caused you to ask Chad those questions?
Lori had been incarcerated and there was the big news and search for missing children.
Now, did you learn why Chad had wanted to?
He knew that all this was going on with Chad's new wife that he had just met, had dinner with. And how weird would that be? Imagine that if your buddy, his wife passes, it's really sad. He's immediately remarried and he seems happy. Then his new wife gets arrested. Their kids are missing. You don't see their kids. Either you don't hang out with that person, or if you trust them enough to hang out with them, you definitely ask what the heck's going on with the kids, which is what he did. And this is so important because it shows the knowledge at this point that Chad knows something's wrong with the kid and he's willing to lie about it. I mean, that's what's really important. Now, maybe he could believe Lori's lies and maybe Lori wasn't telling him, but based on the phone conversations, context with conversations with everybody else, it certainly seems like Chad knows what's going on, but isn't going to say it.
Meet with you that day?
Yes, eventually, yes.
And why had Chad wanted to meet with you that day?
We had previously talked about splitting his property and possibly putting another home on it. And we determined that his lot was too small. And so he wanted to know if he could put a home on it, which I thought he could. My experience thought he could probably put another home on it. And we talked about the fastest way that could be done. And that was with either a manufactured or a modular home. And we talked about some of those details.
And did he tell you why he wanted to put that home on his property at that time?
He said that he felt like he was going to need a place for him and Lori to live.
Okay. And you said that you talked to Mr. Daybell about doing that as fast as possible. Why did you talk about doing it as fast as possible?
Probably because getting into a home and having one built back then took 8 to 10 months, and you could get a manufactured home in 3 to 4 back then.
Okay. And back to the conversation that you had with Chad about where the kids were. When you asked where the kids were, whose children were you referring to?
The kids that were missing, Lori's kids.
His wife Lori's children. And what did Chad tell you about his wife Lori's children and where they were?
He looked me straight in the eye, and he told me that they were okay, and when this all was going to be, when everything came out, that everything was going to be just fine.
And that was in March of 2020?
That's correct.
I have no further questions for this witness.
All right, thank you.
I mean, it's kind of like he's just bold-faced lying at that point. Right? I mean, how do you continue with the facade of he didn't know what was going on? Then we get to cross. Here we go. Here's where the fireworks happen. Pryor starts out by, proving that, asking, he's part of the LDS faith. A lot of that today, that a lot of these witnesses trusted Chad, believed similar things, even if it was different. They're in the LDS faith, whatever. We'll see what effect that has on the jury eventually. We've gone over that ad nauseum. Alex was with Chad at the property, okay, Alex Cox, which is important because this would be post a lot of things that Alex did that Chad is basically arguing he should be scared of Alex, or he was targeting him with the Dodge Dakota, and he was Lori's protector, and him and Lori were conspiring and doing all these bad things, and Cox was the guy pulling the trigger man with the weapons, and the one hurting people, and the one taking JJ, and the last one with JJ, and he's this bad guy that I don't know and I don't have any connection with, is what Daybell is trying to argue. Yet he's showing up almost like a family member or friend, looking at property, making decisions, making moves together. And I think that's really important because, again, the only connection any of the Daybells have with Alex Cox is Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow in the conspiracy that the state is proving with this story they're laying out for this jury. Then we get into David Warwick and Melanie Gibb, who we've heard from in this trial, and the meeting, the infamous meeting where they're all meeting together, discussing the property, how much money there is, and that's where things get awkward.
Ms. Beatty. Ms.
Yeah,
Pryor Cross, yes.
Good morning, Mr. Arnold.
Good morning.
Oh, whoops.
So
Sorry, I didn't jump to the right part. Let me jump up ahead a little.
Either looking here or in another location to maybe do some developing.
and did he have the
When we arrived, or he arrived after we were there, but we weren't there very long.
okay. And this person drove in a his own vehicle when he arrived there. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I assume that, yes.
It wouldn't be someplace where you'd walk from somewhere in
No,
Salem, Dakota,
no.
right? Okay. And then subsequent to that, in an absolutely separate car, the other two people who you mentioned were who were the other two people that were there afterwards when Alex arrived?
Oh, David Warwick and Melanie Gibb.
Okay. So then in a separate car, David Warwick and Melanie Gibb arrived, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And how long were you there looking at the property?
Maybe 15 minutes.
Okay. And did David express that he had an interest in purchasing a piece of property?
He had indicated that he was either looking here or in another location to maybe do some developing.
And did he have the, did he give you the?
Also interesting to me for the people that, just kind of a side note, that have issues with David Warwick and Melanie Gibb, they were awfully in cahoots with the Daybells and the Vallows and the Coxes as well. It is kind of strange as you look at all this, and it's just like, oh, no, they're all fine. They're all fine. They had no idea, even though they were lying to cops. Shouldn't say they. Melanie lied to the cops for them. They were doing these business deals post a lot of bad information coming out, including Lori getting arrested. They were willing to continue doing this. Now, again, they could be on the brainwash scale, caught in the vortex, seeing the best in people, hoping for the best, believing that everything was okay and everybody's against them for their religious beliefs or whatever it may be, or thinking they're weird. So it could be there, but there's an awful lot of connection there.
Indication that he had the financial ability to do that, or is that something you looked into?
We did not talk about that at that time.
So at this point, on September 21 of 2019 in the afternoon, if I understand you correctly, you didn't look into the financial resources that David may have to purchase 88 acres. Is that right?
It was 79 acres,
Oh.
and I had not checked with him prior to that.
Oh, I was under the impression it was 88 acres. Am I mistaken?
79
79 acres? Okay. And the cost of that 79 acres would have been about how much money?
at the
To me,
time.
that tells me this guy prepared or refreshed his recollection before coming on the stand, which I always appreciate. But Pryor's been right, I feel like, about a lot of these weird nuances that he's disagreeing with witnesses. Maybe another witness said 88. I don't remember, but interesting back and forth. And you can tell, and this is just kind of a little precursor, that this witness feels a certain way about John Pryor. And he's going to push back. He's not going to give an inch with John Pryor. I don't know. He says he didn't watch anything. I believe him. But if he has seen or heard how condescending or rude or the type of personality John Pryor has that a lot of you have kind of mentioned in the chat, maybe he's like bowed up and ready to go.
Time about $700,000.
Okay. But you didn't take, it was 88 acres. Am I mistaken?
79
79 acres? Okay. And the cost of that 79 acres would have been about how much money?
at the time, about $700,000.
Okay. But you didn't take the liberty of deciding whether or not David could afford that 700 and some odd $1,000. Is that right?
Mr. Pryor, I didn't know who was coming.
Okay. That's okay. I'm just asking.
I went there to show the property as a favor to Chad.
Right.
And so that's the first time I met David Warwick. Chad had mentioned that he had talked to several people that were maybe possibly looking at developing property in the area.
Okay.
And I assumed that this was one of them.
Okay.
And so
And a lot of people said he was using David Warwick for his money. Chad and Lori were, maybe even Melanie too. I don't know, but this kind of goes into that. Also goes into they were making plans awful quickly as soon as all the obstacles were out of the way. They wasted no time.
if we would have kept pursuing it, obviously I would have.
Okay. And that's not as a means. I'm just getting the fact that we didn't establish whether David could even afford to buy that property is where I was going.
I guess I'm not seeing the relevance of that question to me.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunately up for the judge to decide, not for you and I to decide. You understand that, right?
I guess. No, I
Okay,
don't.
thank-
I don't understand why that question is relevant. Well, sir, you don't decide what's relevant. Pryor's actually right. He's like, the judge decides, not you, not me, the judge. Now, if I'm the lawyer, I would probably just move on or ask the question again if I really wanted the answer. But to argue with the witness like that, even when you're right, is again, the tension is definitely building, which is why this clapback is coming from the witness. So we'll listen to that one more time just so you can kind of hear how it's the tension is there. You can cut it with a knife. Is that what it is?
Is where I was going.
I guess I'm not seeing the relevance of that question to me.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunately up for the judge to decide, not for you and I to decide. You understand that, right?
I guess. No, I
Okay,
don't.
thank you.
Maybe not.
Okay. And then at some point, there was an arrangement for you to meet the following day with David. Is that right?
I don't think so. I think we maybe tried, but they were leaving town. And so the only contact I had with David after that was we had a couple phone calls, follow-up phone calls. Are you interested? He wasn't sure. And then we didn't have any more contact after.
So you don't recall the fact that you went to Gringo's restaurant the next day with Chad with the intention to meet David Warwick on that following Monday. You don't recall that?
Actually, I don't.
Okay. Okay.
And a
And
lot
you
of
don't
these
recall,
details, what time, who was there, did they go to church first? Pryor making a big deal, certain inconsistencies, maybe trying to build some reasonable doubt. I get it. Some points are stronger than others, but a lot of it is not putting reasonable doubt in the big areas that you need to in this case.
I'm mentioning to Chad that David had notified you that he had already left town and wasn't going to be able to meet on the Monday following.
That's good. Yeah, that could have happened that way.
Okay. So in other words, there could have been a discussion with David about going back to the property, and it could have happened that he called you and said, I'm having to get out of town and I can't meet with you on Monday. It could have happened that way.
We did not have a conversation about him returning and looking at the property before he
Okay.
left town.
Okay. Now,
Some of this could be hearsay. Some of it could be effect on the listener, not for the truth of the matter asserted, why they took their next actions. You know, there's a lot of exceptions, whatever. The state's like, we don't care. Go ahead and ask these questions. We're not even going to object.
mentioned that you, on the 19th of 2019, you were over at Chad's house. Is that right?
What's the date?
October 19, 2019?
Yes, correct.
And when you were over there on October 19th of 2019, you're familiar with that house, right?
No, I have never been inside that house.
Oh,
I had
okay.
been in the foyer and they have a breezeway or an entryway, and that's as far as I'd ever been in that
Okay.
house.
Did you familiarize yourself with the property surrounding that house?
When we talked about splitting the property, it was about the acreage,
Okay.
not about the house or the floor plan or any of those kinds of things.
Okay, so the acreage that you're talking about, do you have any recollection of how much acreage we're talking around that surrounds Chad's house?
You own it. How many acres is it?
Well, I appreciate it. I don't know. Judge, could we have a sidebar?
Yes.
So I don't know if you caught it. We're going to play it again. We're going to talk about the sidebar. We're going to take a minute with this, but I first want to say, John Pryor, throughout this trial, I understand people's frustrations with him. I understand people getting mad if I think he makes a good point or does a good part on cross or whatever. He has been condescending. He's been a little brash at times. He's been a little argumentative at times. Fine. He's even been what some people could call a little bit maybe jerky at times. He wasn't really doing that here. He was just like, do you know what the acreage is of this house? You should know you own it. It's like, whoa. And John Pryor doesn't know what to say. He's like, I appreciate that. And that's kind of his crutch, that whenever he doesn't know what to say or some witness claps back at him, you know, to a lesser extent, he's just like, I appreciate that, but let's get to this. You know, he tries to kind of like let it go off his back, but then he's like, this is a bigger problem. Judge, we need to have a sidebar and discuss how we're going to deal with this. And I mean, potentially ask for a mistrial, but this is where it gets really interesting. Like with ineffective assistance of counsel and appellate issues, when the lawyer's not getting paid and he's trying the case, I don't know if there's a single person in that room that wants a mistrial less than John Pryor. I don't think Daybell wants one. I don't think the state wants one. I don't think the judge wants one. I don't think the jury wants one. But I think John Pryor wants one the least. Because Chad Daybell, it's like, okay, you get another day in court. You're still not convicted, kind of extended out. The state, they got to do the work again. That sucks, but they get paid for it. Judge, same thing. Jury gets to go home early. They don't get to come with the verdict. So I get that. Some of them might be bummed about that. But John Pryor's got to do all this over again and not get paid and not do other work. So where's that conflict kind of come in where maybe you should ask for a mistrial? Because now they're making it look like the attorney has a vested interest in this case and it's in cahoots with Chad Daybell. And if they don't like the attorney, maybe now they're even more likely to apply that to Chad Daybell and think he's a jerk or not like him or not trust him. Does it look shady, like stuff's happening in the background? You really got to be careful about that stuff. And if I was the state, I would not be happy this witness did that. I'd be like, bro, this is not your case to win. Take the cape off. Don't try to be a hero. Just answer the questions. Because, I mean, it's funny. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be laughing at it. John Pryor got embarrassed here in front of the jury, but it's not how it's supposed to go. Right? It's really not how it's supposed to go. So we're going to listen to it one more time, listen to his reaction, and then see what happens at sidebar.
Acreage that you're talking about, do you have any recollection of how much acreage we're talking around that surrounds Chad's house?
You own it. How many acres is it?
Well, I appreciate it. I don't know. Judge, could we have a sidebar?
Yes.
So he says, I appreciate it. I don't know. We go to sidebar. So it's obviously highlighted because they go to sidebar immediately after the answer. And now let's see what the judge says as soon as they come out of the sidebar.
Response from, thank you.
All right, here comes the judge.
All right, thank you, counsel. We're back on the record. I had a sidebar with counsel regarding the last response from the witness. And I just want to instruct at this point, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the witness just provided what was essentially an unsolicited factual response in the case, and that answer has no relevance to the charges in this case or the guilt or innocence of the defendant. I'm going to instruct you to disregard that previous comment made by the witness, and on that fact, do not discuss that in any way in your deliberations or speculate about the previous answer. And I'll also instruct the witness to avoid mentioning that topic again. Mr. Pryor, with that in mind, then you can continue with your cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge.
So, I mean, you can't really highlight it any more than that unless you repeated the answer, I guess. I would have asked for, if I was prior, I would have asked for, unless that's, perfectly factually correct that he owns every acre and every bit of the house and it's turned over to him and he can do whatever he wants, then I would say something like, this witness has not provided the foundation to even prove that that fact is true. I would have said something like that, right? Even though we know that it is technically true, probably, at least partially, that he has some type of ownership interest in Daybell's old house or property. But I would want some instruction like that so the jury wouldn't even think about it. It sucks. And now it's been highlighted, and now I think it's an appellate issue, as well as long as prior protected the record enough. I don't think there's anything else, but let me just make sure there's nothing else right here.
Right?
Yes.
And you mentioned that the truth will come out. Is that what you said? Something to that effect?
I didn't say the truth. He said that when
You may answer.
Did I see?
So that was it.
I have
And
no
then
more questions.
they mention it again at the end of the day, which shows you how important it is, how careful the judge is being, how much it's important to protect the record. And we'll see if Daybell does anything else to protect the record here.
From the prosecution, then I understand. All right. From the prosecution, then I understand the state's requesting that we break for today. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor. I think as we indicated yesterday, our next witness had been a little lengthier of a witness. And so I think today would be a good stopping point to come in fresh on Monday.
All right. We had discussed that schedule, so we are going to conclude for the day. We'll begin again with testimony on Monday morning. For the weekend then, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please continue to don't discuss, and we appreciate, we'll intend to begin the test.
Sorry,
Nothing further from the state either.
nothing from the defense.
Okay, thank you, counsel. We're in recess.
Oh, I
Until
might have
Monday,
missed it.
recess until Monday morning. We'll intend to begin the testimony again at the regular time and schedule on Monday with evidence starting at 8:30. So unless either side has anything further, we'll recess for the weekend.
Nothing
Nothing further
further.
from, oh,
Sorry,
nothing further from the state either.
nothing from the defense.
Okay, thank you, counsel. We're in recess.
I think there's.
Oh, he says it after the jury leaves. I swear he said it. Okay, maybe I missed it. I think the judge said, is there anything else you thought we need to put on the record? Maybe it was after the afternoon break or something. And John Pryor said no. So that was it. We don't know exactly what happened at sidebar, but hopefully he's protecting the record for the appeal enough. And that was pretty, I mean, that's a pretty wild court moment. Okay. Now we know a lot of background about this case, so we know how that, seems and feels. I really want to know from you, if you were sitting on that jury and you heard that fact in court that absolutely should not have come in, not admissible, not relevant, way more prejudicial than probative because it proves nothing. What would you think? Put in the comments, what was your immediate reaction when you heard that if you were a juror? What was your immediate reaction the first time you heard it if you had read it months ago? Because a lot of you sent me articles on this saying, can you believe this? I can't believe it. And you were angry about it. So what do you think the jury's going to do? What's their reaction going to be? I cannot wait to read those comments. Make sure you guys hit the like button as well. Thanks for joining me. Till next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.